Hi everyone, let's talk about Brexit. I'm probably going to do a running commentary on this, probably do a few videos on it, so I'll put it in a playlist. Um, but I think the first video needs to be what it is and why it happened, because I've seen a lot of bad information about this really online and in the news especially. So first of all, we need to understand what it is. Now, in 2016, in June of 2016, the UK voted to leave the European Union. Um, that's what Brexit is. Now, this is one of the reasons why I don't like the name Brexit is because it's not accurate. I don't like those contractions anyway, like Brangelina and all that sort of thing. Um, but it's not right. It wasn't Britain that exited the EU. It was the UK. And that's really important actually for reasons that will become apparent probably in the next video. But if you don't understand the difference between Britain and the UK, don't worry, because most people well, a lot of people in Britain wouldn't be able to tell you the difference either, or a lot of people in the UK rather, should I say. So if you have a look at this map, that's the map of the British Isles. And on the left there, you've got the island of Great Britain, which constitutes of three countries: Scotland, England, and Wales. That's Great Britain. And the UK stands for the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. You can see there's Northern Ireland. The grey bit there, that's the Republic of Ireland. That's not in the UK. Very important going forward for other videos that you understand that, because that is a very big sticking point in any negotiations going forward. We'll explain that in probably the next video. But there you go. If you didn't know before, that's what the UK is and the difference between UK and Britain. Go and tell your friends. So this is a map of Europe, and any countries there that are in the EU and part of the EU and make up the EU member states, such as France, Portugal, Spain, Germany, Italy, all those countries, they're all in dark blue. Anywhere in grey, that's a country within Europe that's actually not in the European Union. For instance, that's not a lake in the middle of Europe there, that's Switzerland. They're not in the EU. In the north there, you've got Norway, they're not in the EU either. And then you've got some of the Baltic states and some of the countries down by Cyprus and Greece, they're not in the EU either, Turkey being one of them. And then you've got Great Britain, obviously, and Great Britain and Northern Ireland, or the UK. See, even I get it wrong sometimes. The UK, we're leaving, or the referendum means that we will be leaving in the next few years. So that's what the European which countries constitute the European Union. Now, what are the benefits of being in the European Union? There are four pillars of the European Union, and that is the free movement of goods, services, capital, and labour. So labour, for instance, I can, as long as I've got a passport, I can go to any country within the EU without a visa. I can travel anywhere and I can go and work in those countries. At the moment, I won't be able to after we leave, or at least not until it's negotiated. Again, we'll come to that in the next video. And if I had a company, I could sell my goods to the EU and it would be tariff free. There would be no tariffs on it. There would be no taxes on anything that is sold between countries within the European Union. So there are benefits to being in it. And we joined it, I think, in 1973. Now, as to why we left it, there's been a lot of bad information about why. So I just want to do a quick history of the last 14 years, because this is basically why it's happened. It's happened within the last 14 years, and it started with Poland joining the EU in 2004. A lot of people from Poland moved to the UK, a lot of skilled people and highly educated people looking for work. And they found jobs within the NHS, for instance. That a lot of long-distance lorry drivers are Polish, and they come over and they work. It's not as if they come over and get benefits. In fact, there was a study recently that something like only 1.9% or something like that are actually from Poland that are not employed. There were other countries as well that migrated over to us. For instance, Romania joined the EU, and a lot of Romanians started to come over looking for work and basically just trying to better their life. If I was Poland or Roma, or if I was Polish or Romanian, I'd probably be doing the same thing. To be honest, the UK is great. It really is. Um, but when that happened, the UK Independence Party, which was formed back in the 1990s, who don't like the EU, people started to join it. Slowly and surely, they started to gain momentum throughout the early 2000s. You can see here their increase in the share of national elections and European elections. They gained a lot of seats in local elections as well, and they really did grow their party quite a bit in that period. And then in 2008, there was the global economic crash. That didn't help either because a lot of people lost their jobs. And when people lose their jobs and we're in a depression, they look for somebody to blame. Some people just like to blame other countries. Look at Donald Trump and what he did with the Mexicans and the the Muslims and the Chinese. It's always blaming somebody else for the country's problems, and anti-Semitism does rise as a result of it. Then in 2009 we had the MPs expenses scandal. A lot of members of parliament were taking liberty with their expenses. For instance, they would have a second home and say they were living in the second home so their mortgage would be paid. And one of the big stories at the time was this. One of the MPs claimed £1,600 of public money for a floating duck island for his lake that was on his property, where I think he had a castle, if I remember right. So as a result of that, a lot of people in the UK again got pissed off with members of both parties, not just the Conservatives but Labour as well, who were taking liberties with the expenses, and they moved over to UKIP. So there really was a rise of the UK Independence Party as a result of that. Now, in 2010, David Cameron won the popular vote in the UK. He didn't have enough to form a government on their own for the Conservatives, so he had to go into a coalition with the Liberal Democrats, and David Cameron became the Prime Minister. And he immediately implemented austerity measures on the country, massive cutbacks in the NHS, police, fire brigade, social programs, the lot, and people got pissed off. Austerity has never worked anywhere. I don't care what you say, it's never ever worked in a large country. And people got annoyed, and the UK Independence Party grew and grew over the next 3 years. They won a lot of local elections. If we actually go back to that, you can see there the share of the European elections between 2009 and 2014, it went up quite a bit. And at this time, I think he came to power in 2006. This guy was the leader of the UK Independence Party. If you're in America, I'm sure you know him. It's one of Donald Trump's best buddies, Nigel Farage. The less said about him, the better, though, in my opinion. So you can see there was a rise of of support for the UK Independence Party. And in 2013, David Cameron, worrying that he wouldn't actually get the majority required and enough votes to actually form a government in the next election, decided, okay, I know what I'll do. He said, we'll put it to the public. We'll give them an in-out referendum choice on whether we should stay in the EU or not. He gambled, and he thought, well, if I do this, I'll win the election, and people will say, no, we want to stop in the EU anyway, and it'll be a win-win for him. He won the election. He got a big majority in the election, 331 seats, although not as big as he thought he was going to get, because the SNP, the Scottish National Party, gained massive amounts of seats in that election. Labour had a very poor showing under Miliband, but it worked for Cameron. It was great. Okay, I'm Prime Minister now. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, it backfired on him spectacularly in 2016 when a slight majority of people, 51.8% I believe it was, voted to leave the EU. As to why it happened, lots of theories have been out there, but I'm going to dispel quite a bit of myths now. It wasn't racism. Yes, okay, racism did play a part. There was always a small percentage of any country that have racists in them. Not everybody who voted to leave the EU were racist, though. But I will say this: probably everybody who is a racist voted to leave the EU. Um, what it was populism, and it's the same as the reason Donald Trump became president, the same as Marine Le Pen had such a good showing in the French elections, the same as the Italian left wing had such a good showing in the recent elections. It's populism. Doesn't matter whether it's left or right. And also, it played a massive part in the referendum. Now, what is populism? Populism is the bottom 80%, certainly bottom 60%, but the bottom 80% of the income level in a country just getting pissed off with the top 10% and the elites telling them what to do, what to say, and how to think. Neoliberalism rampant throughout the world, and they've had enough of it. People's lives have not changed for the better since 1980 and before, maybe even the 1970s across the world, really. Since globalization has come in, the middle class of America has just fallen off a cliff, as you can see from this. Where it starts going down there, it's called the elephant graph, by the way. This is where it starts going down. That is the poorest person in America. So you can see there at the bottom, that's the middle class. That's why there is no middle class in America right now. And it was the same in Great Britain. The bottom 60%, or certainly the bottom 50%, said, you know what, I'm fed up of you telling me what to do, telling me what to say, telling me what to think. Bollocks to you, to give a truly in English expression. And that's why the UK voted to leave the EU. It wasn't racism, it wasn't anti-Semitism, it was two fingers to the establishment, and that's basically why we decided to leave the EU. Now, as to what happens next, I'm going to actually do that in another video, and that will come tomorrow. And I will say what comes next, and actually what has happened since June 2016, because that's extremely important. It has been mismanaged very badly by Theresa May, who is now the Prime Minister of UK, because David Cameron, of course, even though he said he wouldn't, when he lost the referendum, he resigned the very next day. He repeatedly said he wouldn't, but hey, politicians lie. And that's it. So if you didn't know the difference between Great Britain and the UK, now you do, and now you know what the EU is, the benefits of it, and why Great Britain, or why the UK left. See, I keep getting it wrong as well. Thanks very much for watching. Hopefully you'll watch the next video. Click the bell, click subscribe, and you'll get a notification when any new videos drop. And thanks very much to all my patrons. I wouldn't be able to do this without you. And I need support to be able to do this and keep doing more videos going forward. So thanks very much, and join me in the next video where I'll explain what's happened since and where we go from here. Thanks very much, and until next time, peace and take care.